Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Please, somebody just write in the chat box if you can hear me. I know that Safa is on and she's saying it's not working, so just let me know that you guys can see me, and we'll get started, inshallah. Okay, I feel like I'm a little bit all over the place. I was preparing for the past hour up into like the second I needed to start, and so I'm just kind of all over the place right now, and I had to pray Maghrib really quickly because otherwise I might miss my Maghrib. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Nadia. Told me that she can see and hear me. Perfect. Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen ar-Rahman ar-Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. اللهم يشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. I was smiling because this is the first live stream where my husband is right next to me, and I hope he doesn't distract me because this is a first. He's saying he's gonna leave, which he needs to because this is not cute. Okay, so this is the first live stream in I think about a month. The last time we talked about trials and tribulations, and then I believe that was during Ramadan, and then it was Eid time. I was in Detroit with family, and then I had family visiting. My brother and his family came, and then I left for camp for a week. I was away helping run a youth camp that I've been involved with for the past, this was I believe my 12th year on the administration side. So always the best week of my year is being able to go back to that camp and help out and just spend a week with those amazing campers and counselors and being completely secluded in nature with no phone, no internet, no nothing. So it was a great week. I just got back to NYC this weekend, and it's just been go, go, go after about a 3-day kind of hibernation, like catch up on sleep. But alhamdulillah. So, you know, one thing as we're doing these live streams is a lot of you guys, I recognize your names, but for some of you who I don't, if you can just kind of say where you're from, where you live, that would be great. It helps me a lot to kind of nurture and further, you know, this community we have of you know, this like Haute Hijab community we've got going on. So that just helps me get to know you guys a little bit more. Aisha, the camp happens, it's a Michigan camp. It's the oldest Islamic camp in the US. It's in its 33rd, 34th year, something like that. So it outdates myself. And I know that there are other Islamic youth camps, but I do believe this is the biggest one in the US. So Ohio is not very far from Michigan, and you can definitely send your kids. It's for kids ages 8 to 18, and it's called Camp El Hilal. I'll write it in the chat, Camp El Hilal, and you can go to campelhilal.org to check out all the details. It happens every year in the summertime, usually in August, for 1 week. It's an amazing camp for kids. It's an amazing experience for me as an administrator. It's a place where, and something that, and this is perfect for our talk today about reconciling our Muslim American identity, it's a place where Muslim youth can go to feel as though they can be entirely themselves for that week without any apologies, without feeling ashamed or embarrassed or fearful or whatever the case may be, particularly in today's climate. And something that really broke my heart was just this overarching theme throughout the week of these youth feeling afraid, feeling hesitant about their identities. And it was so heartbreaking to see that this was how they were growing up. And, you know, the ramifications of that as they get older into their adulthood are yet to be seen. But, you know, I pray that they'll become strong in their faith and they'll have the confidence it takes to be unapologetically Muslim here in America, which is a great segue into our topic today, which is reconciling our Muslim American identity. Let me grab my phone. So a lot of you guys had suggested this topic on Instagram and on Snapchat when I asked you for your topic suggestions today, which couldn't have come at a better time for a number of reasons. Number one, because like I said, this is something that I was just dealing with for the past week at that youth camp, but at the same time, something that I'm really excited to announce is a college MSA tour that Haute Hijab is going to sponsor, and we're going to put on coming this fall. So inshallah, our plan is to kick off in Chicago, inshallah, in September, followed by Detroit, and then New York, and then moving over to the West Coast. I'm thinking LA, I'm throwing around North Carolina, Texas, possibly Ohio. So that's something that I'm really excited about, where I'm gonna do a college tour and talk to Muslims on college campuses about, similar to this topic, about our Muslim American identity, but more so in creating that culture or that space for us and really reclaiming our identity and our faith. So anyway, this was a perfect topic for me. All right, so sorry, I needed to like catch up on my breath. Let me dive right in. And thank you guys for telling me where you're all from. This is awesome. It's really helpful for me so I know where you guys are all coming from. Okay, so the first point in getting into this topic, which is to reconcile our Muslim American identity. The first important point to note is that we can and are both Muslim and American. Okay, so at its outset, we need to quash any idea that to be Muslim means that we cannot be American, that the two conflict with one another in some way. The two identities of being Muslim and American are not mutually exclusive, and they need not clash with one another. Surely we can be Muslim, we can be American with no issues. All right, that's the first point, first and foremost, that I want us all to be in agreement with, and something that we all have to understand and come to terms with, because unfortunately, that's something that is somewhat of a misconception for people who don't necessarily understand Muslims or Islam, who feel as though Islam is at, Muslims are at odds with the West, Islam is at odds or clashes with the West, when the opposite is true. And that's what we're going to get into today. So next, we have to realize the roles we play within each identity. So as Americans, let's start with that identity, our identity as an American. And again, if you're somewhere in the world, in any other Western country, of course, Europe is somewhat of a different experience than the American experience. But if you're in a Western country, then please replace whenever I say American with your Western country. So as Americans, we must be present. Okay, so this is the role that we as American Muslims need to play, and know and understand that we must be present. We have to make an effort in the Western country that we live in, to learn the language, to engage in the society. If we look at our parents who came as immigrants into these Western countries, they did their part. Look at your parents. They learned the language. They educated themselves in Western institutions. They integrated within society by working, getting jobs, doing their part, playing their role in society, right? So we all have a role and responsibility in the country that we live in. And in this Western context, that means to be present. We cannot retreat and take advantage of all the good that America brings us without engaging and contributing to the society around us. Just anecdotally, I actually legitimately know of people who live in a town called Dearborn, Michigan. If you're familiar with it, great. If not, Dearborn is basically it's the Middle East outside of the Middle East. So the largest concentration of Arabs outside of the Middle East are in Dearborn, Michigan. And it's this town where if you go there, all the signs are in Arabic. The schools get both of the Eids off as holidays because otherwise no kids would show up to school. I mean, it's just like you feel like you're in the Middle East, all right? And I kid you not, I know people from that city who have legitimately never left that city. Everything they ever needed was there. Their family, their grocery stores, their butcher, their salons, their schools, their workplaces of work are in that city. And now while you might be like, oh, that's cool, like, you know, why would you leave? Everything you have is there. But the opposite argument is that you're not truly contributing to your society. If you're hibernating and cocooning yourself in what's basically an extension of back home, right? So this isn't the mentality that, and of course that's not most people in Dearborn. That's like older people who came and didn't take the time to learn English or just felt comfortable in their little, you know, like Arab bubble. It's not the rule. It's definitely the exception, but I'm just telling you it exists. So as Americans, we have to be cognizant of our own involvement in society, of our behavior and our contribution to the society at large, okay? Just briefly, our American role. Now our role as Muslims, right? So as Muslims, we also have an obligation to not only be authentic Muslims, but to know what our deen teaches us, to know our religion, to know what Islam teaches us about how to act, to do righteous deeds, amr salihat, amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar, right? Enjoining what is right and forbidding what is evil, knowing right from wrong, standing for justice, speaking out against oppression, all these things that we as Muslims stand for, right? So as Muslims, we also have an obligation that we uphold for ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so these are kind of like our two roles. Now, let's just take a step back for a second and try to understand the context that we're operating under before we move forward. Now, of course, it's no secret today, whether you live in America, in the West or not, you probably know and understand that there is a very inflammatory rhetoric taking place today surrounding Muslims, particularly those in the West. Just today, I was actually on a radio station in Ireland to speak about the ban of the burkini in some French towns, right? So this is taking place all across the world. And like I told you about these kids at this camp that I went to, it's something that is permeated so deep into our consciousness, to our youth, our adults. It's something that is truly plaguing our communities. And 15 years ago, when 9/11 happened, and I'm somebody who, I was in high school at the time, so I'm somebody who kind of was brought up during that first crisis. To think back about that time and how we reacted as a community, and fast forward 15 years later today, as a Muslim community, I don't think this is, you know, me romanticizing the past. I truly feel and believe that things are worse today in terms of the plague that this negativity has affected our community. So let's take a step back and try and understand where this is coming from first and foremost, all right? So negative perceptions of Islam are hardly new in the West. This is, and I'm talking pre-9/11, all right? So this is nothing new. However, these recent attacks, whether it was 9/11 or anything since then, has confirmed to many in the West this idea, this false idea that Islam is an enemy, estranged from them. And that, like I said at the top, that Islam and the West cannot coincide. They cannot be together as one. Now, on top of that, domestic realities within America that deepen the negative feelings. So what I mean by this is the increased visibility of Muslims. So now we're increasing in number and population, right? And the visibility is increasing because through our clothes, how we dress. Now more than ever, there are more women who wear the headscarf than there were when our parents immigrated to the United States. There are more mosques. Even skin color is increasing the visibility of Muslims, right? So this shows that Western societies are changing. And as such, this change is frightening. It's frightening because it threatens the status quo that the society, whether real or imagined, has operated under, this homogeneous identity that has been, you know, again, whether real or imagined, has been the status quo for, you know, white Americans. And since these lines of homogeneity are becoming blurred, Americans now wonder about the future of their country, of their own culture. Are they going to become the minority soon? Is their culture going to become extinct? Are we going to take over, we the collective minority, whether you're Muslim, you're Latino, what have you? Okay, now add to that another layer of complexity, which is the immigration debate, right? So our presence and our immigration here adds another layer. And what we know is the future of the US is bleak without immigrants to help sustain the economy. However, there is a deep resistance, both culturally and psychologically, to this inescapable reality that we need immigrants in order to continue operating as a country. Okay, so that's another added complexity. Now add to this a general state of instability associated with war, which we've been in for the past at least 15 years, on and off, even more so, going down, you know, the Gulf War and the Vietnam War and the Cold War, everything, right? So you have a general instability associated with war and an economic downturn, which we've been suffering since at least 2008, at least, right? So now we kind of get a picture of this identity crisis here in America, right? Not American Muslims, of America, of how a nation that was founded by immigrants who sought freedom of expression and freedom of religion is now being flipped, right? That same freedom of religion and freedom of expression, those same principles that founded this country are now the same principles that are tearing this country apart with doubt, mistrust, fear by the new immigrants, right? So I give you all of this background to allow us to understand where this fear is coming from. What's the context of all of this that we're going through? It's really important to kind of understand the history and where we've come and why this has happened so that we can move forward. So, notwithstanding all that, whatever the atmosphere today, we also know that the US is not inherently anti-Islam, that the US is not inherently anti-Muslim. We know that, right? Obviously, we have our rights as Americans for our freedom of religion to practice in the way that we see fit. We have our First Amendment rights to freedom of expression, freedom of speech. Okay, so we know that there is hope and not all is lost. However, I say all this because here's my point. Because we've been going through all this for the better part of the last 15 years, what's happened is we have been victims. We've put ourselves through a victimization mentality where we've allowed ourselves to be the victim of this constant distrust and fear. And it's made us completely defensive, right? So we're always on the defense. We're always condemning. We're always apologizing. We're always the ones to be the first to speak out. We're always on the defense. And when you're constantly on the defense, you're not then being the offensive player. You're not then doing what you need to do to integrate, to contribute, to put forth your contribution. We're not focusing on that. Instead, we're focusing on apologizing, on being the victim, on fear, and we're playing into the hands of those who seek to instill fear in all of us. So what my message today to all of you in reconciling our identity between American and Muslim is to stop apologizing for being Muslims, to stop being on the defensive, to, as my teacher Ensei Tamra says, to pack up our pity party, to pack it up, seriously, to pack it up, and to be more assertive about our values, about our duties as Muslims, and about our rights and contributions to the American society in which we live. Right now is not the time for intellectual, social, political, economic, cultural isolation. The exact opposite is true. Now is the time for intellectual, social, political, economic, and cultural integration. All right? So what we need to do is make sure that we are active in all stratas of society, that we're at the forefront of all issues, coming forth with our Muslim identities and our applied ethics that we hold so dearly as Muslims, and add to the conversation and bring forth the positivity that we as Muslims can bring to the conversation because we have the Quran, because we have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because we have the truth. All right? So that is basically the crux of what I want to talk to you guys about today. But instead, unfortunately, what we have today is an utter identity crisis. Now, we have a crisis on so many levels, whether it's the crisis between our immigrant parents, where we're not, I don't identify as an Arab as much as I identify as an American. I don't identify as a Filipino as much as I identify as an American. But at the same time, those who seek to isolate me from my American identity and tell me that I'm not fully American also causes a wedge between my American identity. And at the same time, people who believe that to be American inherently means it's against or anti-Islam. So cultural practices and traditions within the American context are at odds with Islam. So then again, you're stuck in the middle between, well, I'm not where my parents are from, and apparently I'm not fully American, so I'm kind of in this middle ground and I don't really know who I am, what I believe in. And as a result, we've seen so much discord and there's been so much confusion. And it's led to so much loosening and letting go of some things that we should be holding on to tightly. But it's also caused us to be inauthentic about who we are. So we have to ask ourselves, who are we? What do we want? How are we going to have blossoming personalities that are coherent with all the different facets that comprise us? The American piece, the Muslim piece, and yes, some of that culture piece, because at the end of the day, our parents' culture does play into our identities and who we are. But how are we going to reconcile all of them so that it's one cohesive and coherent identity? Now, the ideal state, and I'm going to kind of talk about our American identity for a second. All right, so the ideal state is to engage with others at the center. Like I was saying, now is not the time for isolation. We can't be on the periphery. We need to be at the center in a peaceful way and in a spiritual way. It's easy to remain in our cocoons. Far more difficult is it to participate in the affairs of society. But we have to do it. It's incumbent upon all of us as Muslims and as Americans. We can be who we are and what we want to be without isolating ourselves from urgent issues of society. So it's okay to be Muslim, but to also join the Black Lives Matter movement, right? You can join seemingly American causes while being Muslim. In fact, it is an Islamic thing to do because you're fighting for justice. And although it may not be a Palestine-Israel, cause, or Burmese or Pakistani or whatever it is, all those causes that we flock to because they are near and dear to our hearts. The pressing issues here in the States, whether it's poverty, whether it's disproportionate jail time, sentencing, all of that for African Americans, whether it's drugs, whether it's the disparities in education, healthcare, you name it, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. All of those issues should be our issues, things that we are fighting for, taking to heart, truly caring about, whether they're Islamic or not, Muslim or not. As Americans, it's our responsibility to be at the forefront, not just to be involved, but to be leaders in those issues. And to separate ourselves from those issues because they're not traditionally what we see or we deem as Muslim issues is truly a disservice to you as an American and as a Muslim. Because a Muslim does right, regardless of who it's for. Right is right is right is right. A Muslim stands up for justice and speaks out against oppression. And all of those issues that I just raised seek to further justice and to speak out against oppression. Whether it's the poor, whether it's a racial minority, whether it's a class, whether it's any other divide. So we have to rid ourselves of this notion that to be Muslim means that we can only care about Muslim issues. To be Muslim means that we care about issues that are right, that are worth fighting for, period. Now, in addition to that, the way we behave, right, the way we act has a profound impact on how others view us. It's easy to preach peacefulness, but if our behavior in society suggests otherwise, then we lose. We're inauthentic. We have no credibility, right? We have to remember that communication is a two-way street. It's not I speak and you listen. Because yes, we may have the truth, but we don't have all the answers. We're a new community. And what we fail to do, and this is something that I spoke about in the article I wrote on the Black Lives Matter movement, one thing that we fail to do as new Muslims to America, meaning Arab and Southeast Asian Muslims, is we fail to look to our African American counterparts who've been there, done that, Muslim and non-Muslim, to look at their strife and their struggle of African Americans who were once enslaved and denigrated here in the United States and are now involved in all mainstream American debates, activities, whether it's education, justice, politics, sports, arts, culture, whatever. Clearly the struggle is far from over, clearly. But they show the way forward for us as new American Muslims. And that's why I say, it's not I speak, you listen. We have a lot to learn. Although we come with our Muslim understanding, which we know is the truth, we have to be humble. We have to cultivate the art of listening and learning. We have to listen to the indigenous people, whether they're the African Americans, Latinos, others who came here far before us. We can't patronize them. They, and some who may be newer to Islam, but have been Americans far longer than we have and have much to teach us. So balance is the key. Next point. So in addition to that, Islam is incomplete without education. Okay, so there's widespread illiteracy, misunderstanding, and ignorance about Islam and about Muslims. And if we're not the ones teaching others and showing others what Islam and who Muslims are, then we've completely missed the mark. It's our obligation, it's our duty to transmit the essence of our faith, not only to ourselves within our community, to our children, but to the greater society. And we are the best example of our faith through our behavior. And that's why I was saying earlier, The way we behave has a profound impact on the way others view us. And I know that sometimes, and I hear girls saying all the time, you know, I'm so tired of having to represent an entire faith because I wear hijab. But now more than ever, you should be proud to be able to hold that banner of Islam so that you can be one of those people educating others on what Islam is. If not you, who? If not you, who? If we can't take that responsibility for ourselves, for the ummah, for our collective well-being, for ourselves and our children, who's going to do it for us? So we have to take the onus on ourselves. And men as well. Women, you know, we wear the hijab and we stand out. But we have to know and we have to understand that our behavior, more than anything else, more than what we say, what we do, how we act is going to have a greater and deeper impact on this education piece. Educating others on what Islam teaches, on who a Muslim is. What do we believe? What do we do? A simple act of making sure that when your neighbor's away, you water their lawn. They never asked you, but you do it because it's a nice and kind thing to do. You doing that simple act is going to bear so much more fruit than you talking to your neighbor about what Islam is and what we believe in. It's these small but consistent behaviors that show people who we are and what we believe through our actions that are going to make the biggest difference when it comes to education. Now, we know that, like I said, we're kind of stuck in between two places, right? There's no returning back to the old country, wherever that is. America is our home. And if there are any mental or psychological barriers to integrating with society, first and foremost, we need to overcome that. But at the same time, and like I was saying, we need to convince Americans as well to integrate us into their minds. Now, this is the active piece that I was talking about up at the front. So this requires many things. Nurturing the media, nurturing the entertainment industry, getting into fields that we as Muslims traditionally have not been a part of. Now, when our parents came to the States, they did an amazing job of laying the foundation for us as their children. They built masajid, they built schools, they built institutions, they made institutions, bringing people together, and they did a fantastic job. They're, for the most part, wealthy, educated, well-respected in society. Now, as the children of our parents, they passed the torch on to us, where they put us in a unique position where, like our parents, we're, for the most part, educated. But now we're in a unique circumstance where we actually have the choice to determine what it is that we want to do with our lives. For our parents, a lot of it was just about making sure that they were able to make ends meet. That's why we see a lot of our parents in the medical field, in engineering, in other backgrounds that are what you would typically associate with an American Muslim. But we're in a unique position because we can go into those areas that our parents didn't, like the arts, like media, like journalism, like entertainment, like politics. These areas that typically are not integrated with Muslims, but that are areas that are desperately in need of Muslims. Now, not just any Muslims, but Muslims who actually know and understand their core beliefs, who they are, what Islam teaches them. We don't need to be the next, group of people who completely strip themselves of their values and the beliefs in the name of integration or in the name of assimilation. You can integrate and you can assimilate while still holding true and strong and steadfastly to your beliefs as a Muslim. Now, so like I was saying, we can't be shy from speaking about spirituality, about our practices, about our deen, particularly in this society, in this consumer society, this materialistic society, society that is in so much in need of our values and of our teachings. And keep in mind and know how blessed we are as American Muslims, because we're better able to practice these things, to speak about these values in this country, in America, than in many so-called Islamic countries where your breed of Islam may not be, what's welcome. I can speak with firsthand knowledge of that living in Dubai, where truly and wholeheartedly I felt as though I could properly express myself as a Muslim here more so than I could in a so-called Islamic country in the UAE. I felt that with all of my heart. I could give you anecdote after anecdote. I don't even want to talk about it. I'm like so out of that time in my life. So know that we're in that unique position to speak about who we are as Muslims, to hold true to those things, and know that we're blessed to be able to do it in such an amazing country like America. Now, my God, I can't believe it's already 8:36. The last piece, and then we'll kind of open this up to questions or discussion, is like what I was saying about we have to know our deen. We cannot sacrifice our values. We have to authentically be ourselves as Muslim. We can't allow our fears or low self-esteem or low confidence be the catalyst for sacrificing our beliefs. What I've seen too much of in the past 10, 15 years is that we're letting go of so many things that we never would have thought to let go of 10 or even 5 years ago. We're loosening up on so many things that used to be so important to us in the name of, oh, you know what, that's not important right now, because people are going to think this, and you don't need to do that right now because it's not really that important, and so don't worry about that. Let's just talk about hijab, for example, because that's just such an easy example. Wearing a hat instead of hijab, whatever your belief is, I'm telling you the truth, is that to others, it makes us appear weak. Whatever your belief or conviction is on hijab, that's irrelevant. But wearing something to blend in for the purpose of covering your head, but you're not really doing it, only makes us appear weak, because we're letting others define who we are. And if our idea of moderation comes from this victim or defensive mentality, all we've done is appeased others. All we've done is fed into the hand of others who want us to feel weak, to feel like we can't properly wear hijab. I hope that makes sense. And I'm sorry if you wear a hat instead of a hijab. It's just an easy example. All right, so another example is, and my apologies for completely calling out this group of people, which you'll probably understand after I say it. But again, it's sacrificing our beliefs in the name of, I don't know, being cool, assimilation, integration. But when we have Muslim events, okay, where there's dancing between genders, and you have a bar, but there's no alcohol, and you have a DJ pumping out really loud music, and then you call it a Muslim event, I'm sorry to say, but all you're doing, again, is appearing very inauthentic. You're trying so hard to be something that you wish you were, but you just missed the mark. Regardless of the religious, aspect, I could care less about the religious overtone. I'm in no position to judge anybody, nor am I in a position to tell people what's right and what's wrong. I'm just saying how it looks. I'm telling you how it appears to the outside. And when I see events like that, I just shake my head, and it makes me so sad that we can't come up with things for ourselves to create our own Muslim American culture and identity that is still in line with our values, with our principles, that doesn't go above or beyond the boundaries set forth by us, but that's still cool and fun. And the fact that we have to borrow from a culture and kind of just take away some things so that it's, a, you know, like halal, even though it's not. I hope you guys like kind of get what I'm saying, but to borrow from a culture that at the end of the day doesn't, I'm not saying it properly, but I hope you guys kind of get my gist. That to do these things, to let go of certain tenets or beliefs or values that we hold so dear because we want to so desperately to blend in, and sacrificing those values, it only makes us look weak. It makes us look pathetic, to be honest. It makes us look pathetic, like we have no backbone, that will let go of our beliefs on a whim because we want to fit in. So yes, we have to be at the forefront of society. Yes, we need to be active participants, but we have to know our limits as Muslims, and that's where that reconciliation of the two identities comes in. Yes, we want to be part and parcel of the American society, but not to the detriment of our Muslim identities. And that's why it's so important to create our own American Muslim culture. And that's what I'm trying to do with our company. That's what others are trying to do with their music. That's what people are trying to do in the food industry, in the arts. And it's beautiful and it's amazing. And I love supporting other American Muslims who are building this beautiful mosaic of American culture where it makes you feel good. That's what culture is. It gives you a deeper sense of self. And as long as we do that within the limits set forth for us, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's something that we should all work towards. And your contribution to all of this is key. So, and this is something, I know we've talked about this so much, but you figuring out for yourself what your contribution is, what your key core competencies are, what your goals, your skills and your talents are, your gifts, nurturing those so that you can contribute, so that you can be an active part of society, so that you can serve your community, so that you can be that active Muslim American participant in your society, but not to the detriment of your values as a Muslim. So I hope that made sense. And one last thing that I'll say before completely concluding is, now is not the time to be divisive and to create divisions, superficial divisions and boundaries amongst ourselves within our communities. Whether, you know, and this was something that I think it was Deirdre on Instagram brought up, you know, these boundaries that we create for ourselves, like, she's a hijabi and she's not a hijabi. That's a girl who wears an abaya and she's somebody who wears jeans. That's somebody who, you know, wears makeup and this girl thinks you shouldn't wear makeup. That's somebody who believes in Islamic schools and that person puts their kids in public schools. Whatever it is, we create all these boundaries and divides. And now is not the time for us to be divided. Now is the time for us to all come together regardless of those boundaries, because we all have one common goal. One common goal. So we have to come together, and I have to say it, one of the hugest and one of the largest challenges we face as part of our identity crisis is a lack of intra-community dialogue when it comes to race. And the amount of racism that still exists within our American Muslim communities is just, it's appalling. And it's no wonder that Muslims are nowhere to be found when it came to the Black Lives Matter movement. Where were the Muslims? It's no surprise to me. I'm sure it's no surprise to any of you, because we as Muslims have a racist issue. We have a problem with race. We are racist against our African American Muslim brothers and sisters. I'm just gonna say it. Arabs and Desis, we have a race problem. We do. A lot of it comes from our cultural baggage from our parents who brought it with them from back home, in addition to being influenced by the mainstream society that also further entrenches these racist beliefs. And we also have issues amongst Arabs, Desis, within Arabs, there are tiers. I mean, there's so much racism going on in our communities. And if we can't get past these superficial differences amongst us when it comes to just skin color, if we can't get past that, how are we going to work together to be an example for the greater society that we live in? We're going to appear inauthentic, not credible. We can't get our own stuff together. So we can't sweep this under the rug. We have to deal with it head on. If you harbor any racist beliefs or tendencies, you need to attack them head on. Deal with them. Figure out where it comes from. Do not tolerate any racist, language or ideas in your home. Call out your parents. Call them out. Of course, politely and kindly, but let them know there's no place for that in your home, in Islam, period. I feel like doing a whole live stream just on race. My conclusion, our goal as American Muslims is to, number one, to protect our Muslim identity and our religious practices. Number two, to recognize the Western constitutional structure that we live in. Number three, to become involved as a citizen at the social, political, economic level, and to live with the true loyalty to these identities to which we all belong. So, I can't believe I just spoke for 50 minutes. I hope that what I was saying made sense, and it was somewhat cohesive and helpful for you guys, for anyone struggling with, issues of identity. And it's a lengthy discussion, one that takes many more than just one live stream. There's so many facets that I could have just focused on, but I wanted to get kind of a broader overview before getting into little issues. So anyways, let me just look at some of the questions. Hajar Jibrail says, I would like to add something, that is, these contradictions are present in Muslim countries such as in Morocco. I guess that there's a problem in what they teach us about Islam, about our behavior as Muslims. I don't know what exactly you're referring to, Hajar, but yeah, definitely. The issues are not just within the Western Muslim, Muslim communities. The majority of Muslim countries have their own host of issues, and being on both sides of the coin and experiencing both, neither is easy, and both have really big challenges present that need to get worked out in order for us to really come together. Number one, as a global ummah, but number two, to really just get back on top. It's after living in a Muslim country where you feel like your whole life as an American Muslim, you were led or taught to believe that that was where the true Islam was practiced. And then you go there only to find out that it's not Islam at all. It disillusioned me completely. It jaded me. It kind of broke me in a way. And, there's just so much work to be done, but I'm really hopeful that if we all start with ourselves and our own small individual contributions to our societies, that we will all be much better off. And the task is not as great as we think it is if we all contribute in our own ways. All right, I don't really see any questions, so I'll kind of chat about what's going on with Haute Hijab for the next couple minutes, and then if you guys have any other questions, you can leave them. Otherwise, we will close, inshallah. Yes, I agree, Reem. She says, Muslims are supposed to be the most respectful, yet many times we are the least. a lot of times we are the least respectful. It's really disturbing, and something that last year at this convention I spoke at, my whole talk was just on adab, and it was to an audience of adults. And it's so sad that we have to have that, fill a 45-minute slot, which we could have talked about or addressed any issue, that we have to talk about something so elementary as adab, that we needed this reminder that, and it's not just because we live in a Western society we have to be on our best behavior. No, it's because we should want to do what's best and live according to the beautiful example of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, with all his beautiful characteristics and manners. Yet, oftentimes it's, in the name of, like if you're out in public, you won't do certain things, but then if you're like in an all-Muslim gathering, you'll let the shoes become at the masjid just like a total heap mess, because it's like, we're at the masjid, who cares? But if you were at work, you would never do that. And it's so sad. There's just like, there's so many intricacies of these issues. Okay, so just some basic updates. I talked to you guys about the college MSA tour. I'm super, super excited about. By the way, if any of you guys are involved in your MSAs at your college and you would like to have me come to your university, shoot me an email. I'm still working out the schedule and the program and all that. So obviously we're gonna have to work with all of you guys so that we can facilitate this whole tour. What else is going on? I'm going to be in Dallas next week. So I'm leaving next week Tuesday, and I'll be in Dallas for I think like 8 or 9 days. My in-laws actually live in Dallas at the moment, and so we're going to be there with them. But I really wanted to do a kind of like a meetup. I want it to be more substantive, kind of something similar to this. Like when I'm home in Michigan, I usually do like a halaqa, basically what we're doing. And so I'd love to see all of you guys. So if any of you are in Dallas, please let me know. I need to figure things out logistically, just in terms of like locations and getting people together. So that's what's going on with me. I'll be in Dallas, and then I get back the week after that, and then I think it'll be like time for Eid. So yeah, so it's gonna be kind of busy for the next couple weeks. So if there are no other questions, inshallah, we'll close, and our next live stream will be probably in 2 weeks when I return from Dallas, inshallah. In the meantime, if you have any questions or need to get a hold of me, you all know, I'm sure by now, how to get a hold of me. All right, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Ameen. Ya Rabbil Alameen. All right, everybody. I will see you all very soon, inshallah. Take care of yourselves, and please keep me in your du'as. Yalla, assalamu alaikum.